Medieval England. Picture a land where towering stone castles rise above rolling green hills, where armored knights thunder across muddy roads, where monks patiently copy manuscripts by candlelight, and where kings, peasants, priests, and warriors together shape the destiny of a nation. This is medieval England, not a dark, unchanging age of rigid feudalism, but a world of remarkable transformation. It was an era of political innovation, social mobility, religious devotion, military revolution, and the gradual birth of the English state. Our story begins in one of the most decisive years in English history, 1066. Across the English Channel, William, Duke of Normandy, assembled an invasion force unlike any England had seen. His victory at the Battle of Hastings forever changed the course of the kingdom. England's centuries-old Scandinavian connections gave way to a new continental identity rooted in Norman France. The old Anglo-Saxon nobility was replaced by a French-speaking aristocracy. But conquest alone could not secure power. To establish control over their newly won kingdom, the Normans rapidly constructed timber motte and bailey castles, raising defensive fortresses within days of occupying strategic locations. Over the next 2 decades, hundreds of these strongholds appeared across England. As Norman authority strengthened, many timber castles were rebuilt in enduring stone, producing magnificent fortifications such as the White Tower, symbols of permanent royal power. For generations, medieval England has often been portrayed as a rigid feudal pyramid, with every person fixed in an unchanging social rank. The reality, however, was far more dynamic. Kings ruled through a combination of personal authority, local customs, and increasingly sophisticated legal administration. Society was certainly divided among nobles, clergy, and peasants, but daily life was shaped by negotiated agreements, regional traditions, cash rents, and legal contracts rather than an inflexible caste system. Even ordinary villagers regularly appeared before manorial courts to defend property rights, settle disputes, and safeguard long-established liberties. Religion stood at the very heart of medieval life. The church was far more than an instrument of royal authority. It was an international institution connecting England with the wider Christian world. Monasteries became centers of learning, literacy, medicine, and agricultural innovation. Across the countryside, magnificent Gothic cathedrals rose slowly over generations. Funded through community labor, generous patrons, and the steady flow of pilgrims. Faith was woven into everyday existence. Parish churches, religious guilds, saints' feast days, and local acts of devotion shaped the rhythm of life from birth to death. Yet beneath this religious unity lay continual political tension. Kings sought to strengthen royal authority, while nobles fiercely defended their traditional privileges. This struggle reached a defining moment in 1215, when rebellious barons compelled King John to place his Great Seal upon the Magna Carta. Although Pope Innocent III quickly declared the charter invalid, plunging England into the First Barons' War, its story did not end there. The charter was revised and reissued in 1216, 1217, and 1225 during the reign of the young King Henry III. Through these repeated confirmations, Magna Carta gradually established one of the most influential constitutional principles in history. Even the king himself was subject to the law. Then came catastrophe. Between 1348 and 1350, the Black Death swept across England with devastating force. Historians estimate that between 1/3 and 1/2 of the population perished, while some modern estimates suggest mortality may have reached nearly 60%. Though this remains the subject of scholarly debate. Entire villages disappeared, fields were abandoned, communities were forever changed, yet from unimaginable tragedy emerged profound social transformation. The severe shortage of workers gave surviving peasants unprecedented bargaining power. They demanded higher wages, lower rents, and greater freedom. The centuries-old institution of serfdom began to weaken, while mounting social tensions eventually erupted in the Peasants' Revolt of 1381. At the same time, England faced another immense challenge across the English Channel. The 100 Years' War, fought between 1337 and 1453, transformed medieval warfare itself. English armies increasingly relied on disciplined professional soldiers rather than purely feudal levies. Most famously, the devastating effectiveness of the English longbowmen challenged the dominance of heavily armored cavalry and reshaped military strategy across Europe. But victory came at an enormous cost. Decades of continental warfare exhausted the royal treasury, intensified political rivalries, and destabilized the kingdom from within. By the middle of the 15th century, those rivalries erupted into a bitter dynastic conflict, later known as the Wars of the Roses. The rival houses of Lancaster and York fought for the English crown in a series of brutal civil wars. The conflict finally reached its climax in 1485, when Henry Tudor defeated Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth Field, bringing the Plantagenet era to a dramatic close. Yet history rarely changes overnight. Although 1485 is often treated as the beginning of a new age, England remained profoundly medieval in its institutions, beliefs, and everyday life. Its deeply Catholic character continued until the sweeping religious transformations of the Henrician Reformation several decades later. Medieval England was never a stagnant world trapped in tradition. It was an age of extraordinary change, a kingdom that evolved from fragile timber fortresses to soaring Gothic cathedrals, from unwritten local customs to the foundations of English common law, from fragmented lordships to an increasingly centralized monarchy. The institutions, landscapes, and legal traditions forged during these centuries became the foundation upon which modern England, and much of the modern constitutional world, would ultimately be built.